Why are we so intrigued with the paranormal, despite not having any evidence that unearthly things exist at all? The answer for me is quite simple. It's because everyone loves a good story. Creepy, scary ones. Ones that make you nervous to turn off the lights. Join me, Nicole, at Unearthly Paranormal Stories as I share true, mysterious, and sometimes downright terrifying tales from real people in a fun, unique, and spooky way. Find Unearthly Paranormal Stories on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information or to tell me a story, check out our website at www.unearthlypodcast.com.
Welcome, 5 listeners.
This is Perhaps It's You, an unofficial Unsolved Mysteries rewatch podcast. My name is Liz.
My name is Samantha.
We have a special guest today. His name is Mac. We don't know where he came from.
He just showed up here and demanded to be on our podcast.
And we're very accommodating, so we were like, yes. It's also possible that I married him at some point in time.
It's possible?
I mean, it was in Vegas, so who knows, really.
Hello. I'm Mac.
Mac's like, I got the divorce papers ready. This isn't going to go well. Mac and I, back in the day, used to co-host a college radio show together.
Oh, this I did not know.
Ye Old Stink Rat Radio Review. Yes. And that is not something I recommend doing if you want to stay together.
No, it was great.
We definitely agreed.
We got along great.
We definitely never fought about it. So this isn't bringing up any memories for me. That's what's important.
Mac, what are your feelings on Unsolved Mysteries? Do you enjoy when Liz makes you watch it so that she can prepare for this podcast?
It's fun. Yeah, no, I remember watching the show as a kid, and I really thought it was more about aliens than it is. Like going through,
we all thought about that.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of dead people. But
I think the aliens is scarier when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And then as you get older, you're like, well, that might not even be true. But what's definitely true is people just getting brutally murdered from time to time.
Yeah. No, it's much darker than I remember, but
it was just family fare. I don't know. I'm not sure if, as we watch, if we'll get... I'm not sure how the segments are put together. Are we going to get like more alien segments as we go on through the season? Maybe.
I definitely remember it being pretty alien heavy, 93 or so. So maybe you're just not there yet.
I really associate it with the show Current Affair. Do you remember that show?
Mm-hmm. It had that very surprising, like, warm sound at the beginning.
Okay, so lots of people tell us when we bring up Unsolved Mysteries that they're still scared of the theme song. And I'm like, whatever. What I was scared of as a kid was the Current Affair noise. It's not even a song. It's like a... and then the...
Oh, yeah.
But that was a syndicated show. I don't think that had like a regular time. I remember that being on with like hard copy and those sort of like crummy entertainment shows.
Yeah. Guys, we're really old. In case you were wondering. Samantha's like, not me.
Nope.
She bathes in the blood of the innocent and it keeps her youthful.
Why do you think I don't have any wrinkles? No, I have wrinkles.
I assumed that was Korean skincare.
Well, that's my secret.
Yeah.
Cheap Korean skincare masks from Marshall's.
Hey, they were.
So that's a very important reason why we brought Mac on this podcast.
We were not looking forward to doing this RFK segment
not at all.
We've been kind of dreading it all season, and we were just grasping at straws of how we could get out of researching it. Could we have spent that time we were trying to get out of it actually doing the work? Were we like a kid trying to get out of their homework? Yes.
Yeah, we could have.
But what we did instead was make Mac do it and come on the show. Thanks, babe.
How do you feel about that, Mac?
He's like, I'm used to this.
Yeah, no,
I'm used to this treatment.
Before we get too far into it, I read an article not that long ago, and I don't know what you guys thought about it, but it was about paying podcast guests. It was about like how podcasts could... I don't know if you read that.
Okay.
Did you read that?
No,
I missed that one.
You know, actually, a lot of our guests have given sending us gifts. So
Yeah.
I'll be waiting on that.
That's interesting. Well, I just thought it was a good article.
Yeah, maybe we will. Maybe, yeah.
I'm
All
real
right.
busy. I don't know. Liz, do you have any updates before we jump into this?
Oh my god. No.
I don't think I do either. This is the last episode of season 2, though.
I think people did tell us stuff we got wrong, and I just
We mispronounced something. I don't remember.
water
what
off
it
the
was.
duck's back.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever.
It was belly.
No, we already addressed that issue.
Yeah, this is the last episode of season 2, and I haven't watched any of season 3.
We've come so far.
Up until this point, I had watched all of it, season 1 and 2 already, just on my own. We're in uncharted territory, or we're about to be.
I've watched like half of season 3, not even, and I don't really remember it. And yeah. Do we have 2 pod dogs in the room right now?
We
Because they
do.
go everywhere Mac goes. So Lenny and Curtis are here.
So cute.
Because Lenny's favorite people are Mac, and then Samantha, who does not live here, and then me.
Well, he sees you all the time, so
Yeah,
it's not
you
quite
know,
as exciting.
feeding him, walking him, petting him. But then he's like, Samantha's here! And he totally loses his shit. Even if sometimes I gotta listen to the podcast, make sure he doesn't say anything totally stupid. Lenny will hear the song, start howling, run to my computer, try to flip my computer over in case Samantha is under it.
Well, maybe I was stuck inside. He's just trying to help me out.
He's not real bright. I gotta say, he's sweet and adorable and a jerk and also not that smart.
All right, are we ready?
Are we ready to talk about
We have to do it at some point.
Robert Kennedy?
Fortunately, I was under the impression that the only mystery in this episode was the RFK one. There's a few others.
I think maybe the first time I watched this, I either fell asleep or I just stopped watching. I'm not
Just
really
gave up
sure.
on it?
I might have not watched the whole thing, or I like left the room for a while.
Yeah.
But our first case is the assassination of Robert Kennedy from June 5th, 1968 in Los Angeles, California. This is considered a conspiracy/historical event.
Okay.
I don't know that Unsolved Mysteries said that or just Unsolved Mysteries wiki, but
I really liked that at the beginning of this segment, Robert Stack made a point of telling us they wouldn't normally do a reenactment of the assassination of a political figure, but they're making an exception.
They have to, since 2 nut jobs said maybe it didn't happen the way that you thought it happened. I'm like, all right, Robert Stack. He was trying to make it sound respectful, I guess. It opens with some footage of the funeral train. Mm-hmm. You see actual footage that was shot right after he was shot. That sounds like a terrible sentence, but you understand what I mean.
Yes.
Did you guys know that Robert Kennedy was a U.S. Senator?
What?
Well, he was. And on the night of June 4th, he was celebrating his winning of the California primary election for the Democratic nomination of President of the United States. He gave a speech at the Ambassador Hotel. He left the press conference to go to the Colonial Room just 40 yards away. Went down the hallway and entered the kitchen pantry. While there, he stopped briefly to shake hands with the kitchen staff, which is classy.
Yeah.
Just want to add that in. Glad he did that. Except that, at this point, he was shot multiple times and died 26 hours later at Good Samaritan Hospital. 5 bystanders were also wounded. There are no photographs or videos taken of the shooting. According to official events, his assassin was Sirhan Sirhan, a Palestinian immigrant, who had fired 8 shots from a .22 caliber revolver at Kennedy and was convicted of murder on April 17th, 1969. The conspiracy is, was there another shooter? And we get a lot of people talking about how many bullet holes are in that room.
A lot of discussion about the bullet holes and how many bullets there may be.
That's basically the whole segment.
It's kind of one of those things where someone says the same word over and over again and you kind of lose connection with the meaning of that, because they said bullet holes so many times it just became sound. It wasn't even like
bullet holes?
Yeah,
bullet
it
holes,
was like the Malkovich scene.
Bullet holes, bullet holes,
Being
bullet
John
holes.
Malkovich.
The thing is, the gun can fire 8 shots. They recorded 8 shots. The FBI makes a diagram of where all those 8 shots went.
Lots of diagrams.
Yeah, Unsolved Mysteries makes like a, I'm sure, state-of-the-art at the time computer animation.
Mm-hmm. Some figures and bullet
some gingerbread
trajectories.
men walking around in the kitchen pantry getting shot. I see like no evidence personally that there is another shooter.
What did they present in the show?
They talk about how one of the bystanders her entry wound doesn't match up with the diagram.
Oh, right. It was from below, but then the diagram says
that
it
it's
ricocheted off the
above,
ceiling.
Which doesn't that just mean it ricocheted off something else? Like, that seems like splitting hairs with the forensics. The thing is, there were a lot of people in this area. There's like a crowd, but you also like know the names of all the people who were in that room.
Right.
So
Mac actually did some research.
Yeah.
Thank Christ.
So there are some kind of strange things around this, because right off the bat, one of the odd things about this is that Kennedy wasn't actually supposed to go through the kitchen. The original plan was for him to walk through the ballroom and then go to this other, I think there was like a band in the other room. He was going to go watch a band play.
Okay.
And at the last minute, somebody from the campaign decided, no, you just won this thing. You got to go talk to the press. So they were like, we're actually going to go. They kind of grabbed him and moved him to the kitchen to go this other way. So that's, that gets people thinking like, oh, why didn't he go with
Right.
So that kind of makes sense that you would find that a little suspicious. And then,
but that also could be, okay. It could be that someone purposely brought him through the kitchen to shoot him, or that could just mean it would be even harder to plan to shoot him because you wouldn't even know he was going through the kitchen.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, it doesn't prove anything, but it's one of those things. Like the whole story here is one of those situations where there's like a lot of stuff that doesn't quite add up, and from this segment didn't go through a lot of it, and I kind of wonder if it's 30 years old at this point, so maybe they've found out this stuff since then, but
okay, tell us some other facts you uncovered.
So the biggest point of contention seems to be that the coroner, the autopsy showed that the fatal bullet shot him in the head from like an inch away, and nobody ever says that Sirhan got that close to him, right? But
then who would have?
So they didn't bring it up, and actually I was looking at this guy Dan Maldeo, who originally I thought was kind of like a trashy crime guy, like.
Sure.
Was he in the show?
He was the guy in the show that was like, no, we can't account for all these bullets. Okay. He was the most suspicious person.
I could see why you would think that, because he strikes me as a... Yes, exactly.
He seems like an ambulance chaser of the true crime world. I don't even know what you call that. And
from what I've learned, there's kind of one of those guys in every city, and they go around, and they're like Danny DeVito's character from LA Confidential, which is a reference no one's gonna get, but
I get it.
Yeah. Well,
wait, isn't that the Rainmaker? No,
he was like the. Remember, he was the sleazy guy working with Kevin. So that guy is working on a book at the time of the filming of this episode. And it comes out like 5 years later. So there's a lot of stuff that he uncovers. And he ultimately accuses, more or less, I didn't read his book, but I looked up stuff about it. This guy, Thane Eugene Caesar, who is the security guard in... And they briefly mentioned...
They briefly mentioned the security guard in the episode.
He also had a gun.
He had a gun with him.
He admits to have unholstered it.
Right. And the discrepancy there is that his service weapon would have been a .38. It would have not been the same size bullet as the one.
Okay, because it was a .22.
Kennedy. Yeah, which is a very small caliber bullet. So that's why, like, a lot of people are shot in the head and live. They're okay. Because
interesting.
Kennedy's friend Paul Schrade is hit in the forehead, and it knocks him out, but he survives.
Wow.
And he's actually he actually does not believe the official story. He was in the room, but he was unconscious the whole time. But he does not think that Sirhan. But that's the problem with this, is it all kind of falls apart once you ask, like, well, what did happen? Because nobody can answer that. They can just say, I don't think that what they said happened.
But then what actually
did happen, and nobody's like, well... The closest you get are people saying that
maybe it was a security guard shot him. But then he would have to have a different weapon on him.
Right. And he did own a .22 caliber pistol. But he sold it after after the assassination, and there's some suspicion around it. But it's all this kind of like smoky, like, oh, that seems weird, but there's never anything concrete.
It just seems to me that with anything like this, where you have like a ton of people, you have a bunch of different eyewitnesses, like, it's not gonna all totally add up. Like, you're going to have some loose ends because eyewitness testimony is not 100% clear.
Right. I wonder how much we can trust the autopsy that said that it was 2 inches away. Because if it's anything like the reenactment in Unsolved Mysteries, there was a ton of people around Kennedy. And yeah, there's no way that he could have been that close.
Yeah.
Right. And
but then how could someone else be that close without anyone seeing it?
And yeah.
So it just seems like maybe some forensics is flawed more than... I would believe, okay, maybe they didn't get the official story exactly right, but that doesn't prove to me that there's a second shooter, because I just don't see how that's possible without anyone noticing. If you tell me the FBI or the CIA hired Sirhan to do this, I'm on board. I will listen to that.
Yeah, and he's still alive. He's in jail in San Diego, and what just was recently denied parole.
Get in touch, Sirhan.
But he's never made that claim. He's been consistent.
Well, of course not, Matt.
That he doesn't remember anything about it.
What was his motive?
So probably mental illness.
Okay.
You know, he had a very like taxi driver kind of obsession with Kennedy, but that seems to have he was Palestinian, and Kennedy had voiced a lot of support for Israel, and so it seemed to develop. Like some people sort of point to that as like, no, this was actually what we would be calling terrorism now, but a lot of people say
assassinations were all the rage.
Well, and
people
that's the
were getting
other thing.
assassinated left and right.
Martin Luther King had been killed like 2 months and 1 day earlier, so it was in the air. It was his brother had been murdered 5 years earlier, and it was very.
So you could see how someone who maybe had some mental illness could have been inspired,
fixated.
Right.
Security was not what it could have been or would be today. They show in Unsolved Mysteries how he like wrote in his journals like, my obsession to kill RFK is like overwhelming or something like that. I think he had this like pinpointed fixation that if he killed him, that somehow that would make things better.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, what's going on there is very difficult to say. There's a documentary on Netflix that it's like a 4-part thing about Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, and it's pretty interesting. They talk to Sirhan's brother, and who still lives in the same house that they used to. I guess you can take a tour if you really want to go to
no thanks.
Sirhan's house.
I'm gonna pass on that.
But his brother will pretend not to speak English when you get there. So that was kind of a cute moment. But but he said that their family was pretty happy, that they can't really explain why this happened. So it's not like he had been talking about it.
They didn't see the signs.
Yeah, there wasn't a moment like with, sort of more modern tragedies where people kind of look back and say, oh yeah, this some of his neighbors said he was kind of weird and hard to talk to. But
my neighbors probably say that about me.
I feel like that's going to be in my obituary. She was kind of a loner. Why'd she watch so much Netflix?
She was weird and kind of hard to talk to.
She had an Unsolved Mysteries podcast. That's not right. That's not normal.
What are they talking about in the episode? Because I'm going to admit, I barely paid attention to this. There was extra bullet holes in like a fridge or
this
something?
Is what they talked about forever.
Yeah, that's the mystery in the episode, or like, what are all these extra bullets doing? And their point throughout is basically like, well, if we can say there was more than 8 shots, if there was, a 9th bullet in the room, then someone else had a gun, because Sirhan could only have fired 8.
But do we know that those bullets would all be from that night?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the hotel had been around a long time. It's not impossible that somebody had been shot in it,
before
60 years earlier or something like that. It's not that old, but, it was around in the 20s and things like that. So
when people were always getting shot in kitchens, we know that.
Blasting each other.
Left and right.
Yeah.
So the big part is there were these like frames around the doors to the pantry. This was considered the pantry. And there were bullet holes in it. And the police took them down and brought them back to the station. And here's another suspicious moment, is that the police destroyed a lot of the evidence after the
that is
trial
suspicious.
was concluded.
You'd think that would go in an archive or something.
Yeah, and in the episode of Unsolved Mysteries, the sort of chief investigator for the LAPD at the time was like, yeah, if I could change anything, I wouldn't destroy those panels, because now everybody's talking about them.
Right.
And he's very much insistent that
Sirhan is a lone
shooter who did this on his own. Yeah, that kind of says to me more that like the LAPD figured out that they did something really stupid, like let a dude with a gun within 5 feet of a senator, kind of thing. You know?
Like they're covering their own tracks.
Yeah, like
that's actually what I think about a lot of conspiracy theories is that it's not some grand plan. It's somebody doesn't want to get fired.
Right. Yes.
Right.
So then they, destroy evidence or lie or whatever because they just don't want the heat coming down on them. Like, I don't know that there's like a puppet master controlling, all of these things, though perhaps the FBI or the CIA hired Sirhan to do this. Just kidding.
I mean, you'd think he would have mentioned that by now, but you never know. I mean, maybe he's...
Really? You're going to cross the CIA, Mac? Well... Who knows what they do?
Well, if he was hired, I guess Sirhan does.
But I think a lot of times when stuff like this doesn't add up, is someone's like, we didn't recover this bullet hole evidence properly, or why weren't we taking a better care of the senator?
Yeah, how was he in there with the gun in the first place?
Yeah, so it's like, well, let's just get rid of this and now. But that just leaves it open to even more questions. And,
right.
Well, and I mean, this is a larger question, but the more generally accepted narrative about Robert Kennedy is that he would have just kind of wandered and just waltzed right into being president in 1968. Sure. And I don't know that that's true. I mean, the California primary was a big win, but he had just lost to Eugene McCarthy in Oregon. And, when I was a kid, I remember the idea was that RFK was the anti-war candidate. And if he had been elected, Vietnam would have been over and, 1,000-year peace would have begun or something like that. Yeah, it was just one Kennedy after the other leading us into the glorious future. But
not Ted,
well, yeah.
Not murderer Ted.
Ted hadn't gone for a drive yet. So Kennedy had a good shot of becoming but he was not the only candidate in the race. And Hubert Humphrey, who ended up becoming the nominee, had like the machine behind him, right? Like this was the '68 convention in Chicago that became just a big riot, right? So Richard Daley the First was there, sort of greasing the wheels for Hubert Humphrey, and even though Kennedy won this primary, that didn't mean anything. Like that's
a really good point.
This was when the nominations were decided in a room of cigar smoking, like,
unlike now,
bosses.
But it's very transparent.
Right? Yeah, it's extremely. It's so much better now. But it is one of those times where like it didn't really matter that he won the primary. That gave him a lot of momentum. But had he gone to the convention, he could have easily not been the nominee.
Sure.
That's interesting.
So it makes you wonder, and I think that with both John and Robert Kennedy, that the reason the conspiracies are so attractive is because it's this moment of like, oh, well, wouldn't that have been great? Because the 70s did not go great, and
we could be on a different path.
We could be on right. Yeah. So you look at this moment and say like, oh, if only. I mean, but you have to say, people voted for Nixon, right? Kennedy could have lost.
Yeah.
To Nixon, it would not have even if he had gotten the nomination.
How do you resist the charisma, just the raw star power of someone like Nixon? He looks like, as I said last night, an old boot crossed with a blobfish. How? I mean, hubba.
But, a big part of that election was an argument that, he talked about the great silent majority, that the sort of suburban conservative people were coming back to...
Oh, assholes.
But to say like, all right, this 60s stuff has gone on long enough.
This is good. You rabble-rousers.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean,
kids,
that was
get off my lawn.
And so who knows? Maybe Kennedy could have sort of united the anti-war sentiment with
but maybe not.
It's such a good thing history doesn't repeat itself.
Yeah, we'll never be in this position again. That's really interesting because I think I'm definitely guilty of thinking that way, that it was like, well, if Robert Kennedy had become president, we wouldn't be here now. Like, we would be on this like much better path.
Right, and it's easy to say, well, if only he hadn't been assassinated. Right. But that's not necessarily true.
We don't necessarily know what would have happened.
Yeah, so I think that is
why it's appealing.
Why it's so appealing as a conspiracy theory, because conspiracy theories, which I sort of love and am interested in, but you have to recognize them as like trying to pull some order out of just chaos, right? Like, the idea that some random dude can walk up and kill the senator from New York who's on his way to potentially be president.
That seems almost more implausible than, it was this master.
Right. And, you don't want to, you hate the idea that, like,
no one's in control.
That these just random forces are acting on you. But, so you make up these grand ideas of,
instead of being like, no, everything sucks and nothing matters. Life has no purpose. Events just randomly occur and we all suffer.
And this guy might just come out of nowhere and kill you just for no good reason other than
he's not well.
Yeah.
And also, assassinations were all the rage.
Well, yes.
This was a very... I don't know. This was a time with a lot of change, and it does feel like now in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
But then we also saw all this footage of people crying when Robert Kennedy was assassinated. I think this was in the special you were watching on Netflix. They showed footage of people hearing this news and they were all crying, and you're like, huh.
I remember what it was like when we'd be sad.
When JFK died, my grandmother locked herself in her room for 3 days. She had a framed picture of JFK up in her house, and she wasn't even Catholic.
Yeah, no, I had some very Catholic friends as a kid whose parents still had a Kennedy portrait, but that was more because
she was a very dedicated civil rights activist who she would get death threats. A car tried to run her off of the road.
Wow.
The FBI had to investigate. So she was like, this is what's going to change, and then...
So she was devastated.
Yeah.
If you liked, and this is not to the two hosts of the program, but if you're a listener and you enjoyed the RFK segment, I do suggest, if you have Netflix, to check out that documentary. It's long. It's 4 1-hour parts, but it's interesting because it has some of that same, like, Kennedy
Things
was
our
ray of hope, and it was snuffed out. And I don't really think that is a very good interpretation, but I do think that you get to watch, like, his progression as a person, because he started out as a Democrat, but a pretty conservative guy. He worked on the McCarthy hearings and was the Attorney General who wiretapped Martin Luther King and stuff like that. He was the Kennedys' relationship to sort of like your grandmother being upset when John F. Kennedy died. That was not necessarily always there. That he was a friend of the sort of
activist,
or he had both Kennedys had a very contentious relationship with civil rights leaders, and it was only over time that they sort of warmed to Robert particularly, and he became good friends with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta during the United Farm Workers strikes and things like that.
Don't eat grapes, everyone.
Yeah, the grape thing, and
my grandma. As we were saying last night, my grandma kept that going long after that was an issue.
just didn't like grapes. Yeah.
I will never eat a grape.
I will never eat a grape. I'm still doing that farm workers grape strike and iceberg lettuce.
Yeah. But and then if you like the conspiracy aspect, there's a little more. There was a witness at the time that night who's interviewed both contemporaneously with the assassination and now, it's in 2017 or whenever it was made, who saw a woman run down the stairs and saying, we got him, and, we shot Kennedy, and she was like, what? And had seen another guy come down with her.
Is that made up?
It's hard to say. There's talk of a woman in a polka dot dress who seemed delighted that they had gotten Kennedy, and who was allegedly
polka dots. You say so very stylish. Is what I'm hearing.
Very classy, put together
interesting,
woman,
funny,
timeless.
Okay. Yeah.
But she
classic beauty.
But she was supposedly seen with Sirhan at some point in the evening.
Oh damn.
Oh.
But where he's at, and he's been up for parole since the 80s. And keeps getting it denied, and you'd think...
Yeah, I can't imagine that's going to go really well.
Yeah, I mean...
No.
You kill a senator.
Right,
I don't know that they're going to be like, yeah, let's give you another chance.
You're fine now.
I mean, they did let... didn't they let Hinckley out of jail just recently?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Rochelle will let us know.
Yeah, she will. Let us know, Rochelle. I was just thinking that person on Twitter you were telling me who really enjoyed rewatching this episode is going to be so thankful that we invited Mac on the show. Because we would have stopped talking about this long ago.
I've been like, yeah, it was clearly him. Done.
We would have nothing insightful to say, which I don't. But this is all very interesting.
So there are just a couple things that stood out. An interesting little tidbit. One of the people who tackled Sirhan to the table that they talk about was editor of the Paris Review, George Plimpton.
What?
Yeah.
George Plimpton.
Just the Zelig of the 20th century.
How can I be George Plimpton? That man got to do everything.
Yeah, he did. He was on The Simpsons.
He was like the fireworks ambassador of New York or something. He is in Good Will Hunting. I don't understand. He's had the richest.
He played professional hockey briefly and was a boxer. He had a very odd career to write about and things. Yeah, but yeah, George Plimpton was one of the people who
that's crazy.
Sirhan. So the other sort of side of this that people look at conspiratorially is that Sirhan got a pretty shitty defense. Like his lawyer was kind of a showboat and was clearly there to kind of
soak up the publicity.
Yeah, to get known as his name was Grant Cooper, and he was
a name we all know. Thanks to that trial, it worked well.
But he was kind of there to clearly they focused on this diminished capacity defense.
Oh,
and
right,
not on any sort of
maybe he didn't
challenging
do it.
the evidence kind of thing. So a lot of people took issue with that.
Unsolved Mysteries Wiki claims that a man named Scott Enrart, probably said that wrong, claims he was in the kitchen when Kennedy was shot and took several photographs of the shooting. However, he claims that his film was taken by investigators that night. He sued the LAPD in an attempt to get his photographs returned. However, the photographs would later be stolen by an unidentified individual. It is unknown if the photographs had anything on them that would suggest another shooter was involved. There's also claim that in analyzing audio recordings that possibly you can hear 13 shots, but some people say they hear 8 shots.
It's probably an echoey room.
Yeah, that's not convincing to me at all.
I also think it was a revolver. You kind of, it looks like a cowboy gun. You kind of think it's going to be 6, and so when you hear more, you're a little surprised.
Oh,
maybe I'm watched too many action movies, but if you fire too many bullets from a gun, you kind of go, oh, what's happening here? And I have good news that you get to revisit this because Scott's photographs are an item on Unsolved Mysteries in 1996.
Oh, God.
Good news.
You'll be coming back.
Yeah, you'll be coming back for that because we won't have anything to say about it. Why do you think someone would want Robert Kennedy dead other than just being mentally ill? Say it wasn't Sirhan. What would be a motive for another shooter?
Yeah, and that's a good question. The CIA thing was out there, and what do people say about that? The Kennedys, I think mostly in retrospect, had this reputation that they were going to sort of wind down Vietnam and bring about this more
kumbaya time.
Yeah. In the Netflix documentary, they talk about how Robert and John Kennedy were basically the only people opposed to all-out nuclear war with Russia over the Cuban Missile Crisis. That everybody else in the Kennedy administration was like, we got to do it. And they were kind of like,
that's the attitude
what kind of world are we looking at after that? And they're like,
wait and see.
Yeah,
wait and see.
So according to the documentary, and I'm sure there's lots of disputes of this narrative, but that it was largely the Kennedy brothers who were opposed to definitive action against Cuba and against the USSR. So post death for both of them, they've gotten this reputation as like opposing the national security apparatus,
sure,
and being sort of like, and there's not just the generals who sort of want to, never saw a country they didn't want to bomb, but there's also kind of the manufacturing aspects of this. Like there's a lot of money, the military industrial complex.
What?
Right?
That's not a thing.
So there's the people who really love the Kennedys want to say that they were going to stand up to that and that they were going to pull us back from this brink. But I still think that that's very much that, like, what could have been
wishful thinking. Yeah.
I think that John F. Kennedy, like Lyndon Johnson kind of inherited Vietnam from John F. Kennedy. It was not like
sure
his war in a lot of ways. It was a bad idea for everybody who, it even started under Eisenhower. But the idea that John F. Kennedy was going to walk in was, on November 30th of 1963 was just going to be like, nope, you know what, we're done being the imperial power that we have.
Sure.
I just don't buy that. And I don't know that RFK was any more, like, he was kind of seen as the middle position between Hubert Humphrey. This is in the 1968 Democratic primary or, convention. Hubert Humphrey was Johnson's vice president, and he was sort of seen as the continuation of the Johnson administration, which was now tied up with Vietnam. Vietnam and Johnson kind of went hand in hand. And Eugene McCarthy from Minnesota was the anti-war candidate. And so Kennedy was like trying to find this middle ground between the two, which I think everybody thinks of him as this anti-Vietnam guy. And he broke with Johnson about it, but he didn't go to the whole, like, we got to get out now. He wasn't the anti-war candidate. So I don't know that the CIA.
Why would they bother to kill him?
Yeah, why?
Actually, you know what? You probably just talked me out of that.
The CIA has done some horrible things.
That's the thing. If anyone suggests to me that a horrible thing was done by the CIA, I'm always like, probably.
Yeah,
we'll never know.
But they tend to assassinate other leaders of countries and not.
That's true.
And they do a really bad job of it. They tried to kill Castro for so long, and they never got him.
That's
he died
true.
in his bed. Rest in power, Fidel.
Hear me out. So Sirhan can't remember anything about this. CIA, mind control, mind erasing, hypnosis,
amnesia.
Think about it. That's all I'm saying. Think about it.
So, Mac, do you not believe the conspiracy theory that the FBI or CIA killed Marilyn Monroe because she had slept with both Kennedy brothers and knew too much? And was a communist sympathizer who had converted to Judaism.
Right, yeah. Arthur Miller.
Yeah. She was very serious about it. She was kind of a radical, actually.
Yeah, no,
she doesn't get enough credit for being ahead of her time.
I don't know. I mean, if the FBI... So? They killed a lot of people, so who knows?
We're not ruling it out.
All right. Well, it might have been a sleeping pill accident.
Yeah, maybe.
Sorry, Marilyn Monroe.
So you probably want to move on, but one thing I'll say to end it is that the Ambassador Hotel was torn down, and
so we can't go there.
You can because it's kind of interesting. So the Los Angeles United School District, and I don't know if you heard of this guy, Donald Trump. Got into a legal battle.
Never heard of him.
Over the Ambassador Hotel. He wanted to put up a big hotel.
Sure.
Different hotel. And the school district, wanted to build a school. But happily enough, the school district won, and now the Robert F. Kennedy United Schools are there.
That's kind of nice.
There's a big mural to him, and it actually has some of the...
and not a big mural to Trump, which is what he wanted to put in.
This is the best ending to this mystery.
Yeah, and it was nice.
Trump lost to a school.
Yeah, and the documentary on Netflix has like during the shooting, a busboy named Jose Romero took like his jacket and put it under Kennedy's head and talked to him. And apparently Kennedy's one of the last things he said, he was like, "Is everyone okay?" And which is kind of nice. But
and then he was like, "No," and then he passed on. So that's horrible. Is
but,
everyone okay? No, several bystanders were also shot.
Well, they told him they were fine. You know, they decided to be kind and lie.
To be liars.
Yeah. But so Paul Schrade takes Jose Romero to the school, and they can see like there's the Cesar Chavez and Robert Kennedy are in it, and then Romero is in a picture sort of marching with the United Farm Workers, and Schrade is in one because he was a union guy. Okay. UAW. So it's nice. There's a school there, and it kind of talks about, a lot of people were touched by his career and his sort of, especially his sort of change from being sort of just interested in power and being a powerful guy to actually helping people throughout. At least that's the narrative of the documentary.
Sure. Depends how you look at it.
It depends on how you look at it, how you feel about the Kennedys. People really like to lionize them, and some people really like to hate them. I think
somewhere in the middle, maybe.
Well, political dynasties aren't really the healthiest thing for places. But,
Interesting. Have you guys watched that Netflix show Dark Tourists?
No.
So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because I think it's a little bit gross. But there is an episode. So they go to different countries and they do dark tourism. So they go to Fukushima. Apparently you can get a tour of, that seems ill-advised, but you can do all kinds of these weird touristy things.
Okay.
And there's one in the US where they go and you can get a tour of where JFK was shot. And there's literally, like, you can go get in a car and, like, this weird guy will, like, drive you around. And the host is, like, this guy who you would not expect to go. Like, he was in Colombia talking to, like, some drug lords in, like, these, like, pink shorts with pineapples on them. Like, that's the kind of show this is. And he was, like, surprised that the tourist was, like, went off about these conspiracy theories. And I was watching the show with Travis, and we were both just like, isn't that why you go on a tour?
Yeah.
A JFK tour, to hear all of these conspiracy theories? And I was wondering, I mean, you probably can't go to the school, but I'm wondering if they have similar tourist attractions.
I know that Mac has visited the location of the JFK assassination.
Went to Dealey Plaza, yeah.
And he traded a guy a burrito for some information on it.
Well,
that's right, folks. We bring you the finest experts in the land on this show.
I have a little newspaper upstairs somewhere that it's very small, Dealey Plaza. Like, it looked quite big in the Zapruder film and stuff, but it's not very big. And you go to the big book depository, and it's like a little weird shaped intersection, and there's a couple guys out there sort of selling newspapers.
Yep.
And I didn't have any cash, but I was like, well, I'm gonna go get dinner. I'll trade you some food for it. And he was like, yeah, okay. And so I took him to Chipotle, and I probably paid a lot more.
You overpaid.
I think
for sure.
I think
That's all right.
But it was nice. He was a nice guy. It's hard to say whether those people are like, I don't know. It's become such an industry that it was like, you're probably making this. You haven't reprinted this newspaper since like 1993, and it's hard to say whether they believed it or not. But it was interesting to see, just because it's not very big, and that grassy knoll area is maybe 40 feet from the place. It's pretty small and interesting. I don't know. I don't have.
Did it make you believe in a conspiracy, or did you just go, no, this is a straightforward thing?
I don't know. I mean, the thing, like, it's hard to say. Like,
I'm not sure you got your burrito's worth, Mac.
If you weren't convinced.
I didn't read the newspaper cover to cover, to be honest. But,
well, never mind. Let's move on then. Samantha has a ghost to talk about.
I sure do. Yeah, I was surprised that there was more to this episode.
Yeah.
Because that RFK segment was long.
I mean, it was just the word bullet holes over and over again.
I mean, it was, but they stretched it out. So this is The Unexplained. All right, it's February 21st, 1977, around 9 p.m., and the Chicago firefighters respond to a call about a fire in an apartment building. The blaze was confined to an upper floor apartment. When they entered the apartment, they found that a mattress was engulfed in flames in the middle of the living room floor.
Totally normal.
Yeah, you know. Upon entering, they extinguished the fire and then found a woman dead under the mattress.
This is terrible.
I know. The woman was Teresita Bassa, which for some reason throughout this entire segment, they constantly have to pronounce her full name.
Yeah.
It's just Teresita Bassa.
It does kind of
over and
roll
over
off
again.
the tongue, but yeah.
Seems-
I don't think they usually refer to people by their full name like
Yeah,
that.
it's weird. She died of a stab wound to the chest. Sounds like a horrible way to go.
Poor Teresita.
It initially appeared as though she had been sexually assaulted, but the official autopsy ruled that out. There was no evidence of that actually happening. So they speculate later that someone wanted the police to believe that the murder was sexually motivated.
Sure.
So
Misdirection.
yes, Robert Stack appears wearing a trench coat and his favorite tie.
Ugh.
He's in a courtroom and he tells us that with little physical evidence, the investigation quickly reached a dead end. That was until the Chicago couple came forward 6 months after Teresita's death to claim that she had spoken to them beyond the grave.
I love everything about this part where they talk to a Chicago cop. And
Yes.
it's, oh my God, it's so good.
It's pretty good. So Teresita was an immigrant to the U.S. from the Philippines. She moved here in the 60s, and she worked at a hospital as a respiratory therapist. Coworkers described her as dedicated and professional. She gave all her time and energy to her patients.
She seemed really nice.
She did. So there was no evidence at the scene, no fingerprints, nothing. This is, I think, the guy you were talking about, veteran Chicago detective Joe Stachula.
Yep. Yes, it is. The most Chicago-y guy ever.
Yes.
He's eating 2 Italian beefs off screen. He's going to call in the score about how the Bears are really going to do it this year.
So, according to Robert Stack, he was totally baffled. Him and his fellow detectives are wearing Robert Stack-style trench coats throughout this entire episode.
There's a part in the reenactment in her apartment where 2 cops walk out, both of them dressed like Robert Stack because they are going to a Robert Stack convention. I
think Robert Stack really just set the trend. And then, yeah, like these...
It's like, well, if we're going to solve cases, we got to wear these khaki trench coats. Like...
Well, isn't...
McGruff,
I mean, maybe
crime
Robert
dog.
Stack is stealing their look, right? Isn't he trying to dress like a cop, kind of?
Liz has this look on her face. Like, how dare you?
You take that back.
It's over.
Yeah, get the divorce papers. We're done.
So
I hope Samantha has better luck in her marriage.
So Detective Joe is willing to follow up on any lead. So he goes to visit this couple.
This is the fucking best. Oh my God.
So they request to remain anonymous on the show, but they both work at the hospital where Teresita worked. He's a doctor and she is another respiratory therapist. Robert Stack says that they told Stachula, whatever this guy's name is.
Matt, how would you say this guy's name?
I think it was like... It was either Stacula or Stacula.
Stachula?
I think it's Stachula.
Okay.
We could ask howtopronounce.com, but
No, it's all right. It looks like Stacula, but that's not it.
it does look like spatula, but with an S. So, anyway, Detective Stachula they told him an unbelievable but compelling story. So, this is the story. The wife says that late one night, shortly after Teresita's death, she fell asleep at the hospital after a long shift. Seconds after she closed her eyes, Teresita was there, visiting her.
With windswept hair.
Yes, and a weird,
Looking
like,
fine.
light
Glowing.
illumination.
Yeah.
Yes. 2 weeks later, at their home, the wife went to bed early, complaining of extreme fatigue. Her husband went in to check on her and discovered that she was talking in her sleep with a voice that wasn't her own.
Also, she went to bed fully clothed and was wearing jeans and a vest.
Laying on top of the sheets.
Yeah, that's how I go to bed.
With one arm thrown over your head.
Well,
whispering in a strange
voice.
voice.
It kind of makes you look thinner. That's why pinup models always have their arms up. It's just like flattering, you know? So
Sure.
She's like, oh, I just gracefully fell asleep in my regular outfit on top of the bed covers.
So he asked her questions like, who are you? What is your name? And his wife responded, or the voice that was possessing her, according to Detective Spatula, that she was Teresita Bassa. And in the reenactment, she says, "You must go to the police. The police cannot find my killer.
Yeah, I would love to make that call.
Tell them his name is Alan Showery." That's how it went.
Yeah.
So Alan Showery was an orderly who worked at the hospital with this woman and Teresita. During a second session is what they call this, like, possession thing that happens. The voice that possessed this woman became insistent that the husband go to the police.
Why are you going to the police?
Yes, the voice said, "I will give you proof," and said that Alan has stolen jewelry from Teresita. And then the voice says he gave it to his girlfriend. So I guess that's the proof. Detective,
It is actually pretty compelling proof. It proved it to me.
I guess. I think, this is what I think happened. That this woman, and I don't know why she decided to come up with this story, but she just, like, heard this. Or, like, she works with this guy. She worked with Teresita.
Yeah.
Like, she could have just found this out some other way. Like, maybe he told her. And for some reason, she decided to pretend to be possessed
I think it proves he's the killer. I don't think it proves that there's a ghost.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some reason she doesn't want to admit why she knows this information.
Yes.
Perhaps, I don't know, they were banging. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Whoa.
Oh, maybe.
Allegedly.
Good God.
Allegedly. They were allegedly porking. I don't know. Because I find the jewelry evidence that he would have Teresita's jewelry and give it to his girlfriend. Like, how else would he have that?
Right.
Like, he just ended up with a giant jade necklace of hers and a ring that she wore all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if someone just ends up with my wedding ring or whatever, like, how'd they get that?
And you're dead.
And I'm dead.
Maybe look into that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Detective Joe at this point says, "The first thing that came to my mind was, how can I put this on an official police report?"
This guy.
That was hilarious.
I love him. So what is so funny to me is when he first meets with this couple, so according to the reenactment, they asked him, "Do you have any experiences with the unexplained or the occult?" A totally normal question you would just ask a cop.
He takes everything they say completely seriously.
Yeah, and he's like, "I'm a cop and I've seen a lot of things." And then his, like, talking to the camera in Unsolved Mysteries, he just goes, "It was a funny situation." And oh my God.
He definitely also trusts his, like, coply instincts.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Listen, I'm a police officer. I can tell when someone's bullshitting me."
Go buy that guy at Gino's East Pizza. He has really earned it.
So Detective Spatula did not know if he could trust this information or not. He decided to do a background check on Alan Showery and found that Showery lived close to Teresita. Coworkers confirmed that Showery was planning to go to Teresita's apartment that night to repair her television. Spatula brought Showery, I can't pronounce his name now, in for questioning. He confirmed that he went to her apartment to repair the television. He claimed that he did not have the tools to fix it, so he went back home. Detective Spatula did not believe this. So
Good thing we just throw TVs away now.
I know.
We don't get them fixed.
Repaired.
We just throw them in the landfill.
Yes, so they brought in...
Safer.
Yeah, it's safer. I'm glad that landfills are filling up with old, unrepairable
Electronics.
TVs. Yeah, it's great.
Mm-hmm. So they brought in Showery's girlfriend and asked if Showery had given her any jewelry recently, and she said that he had. She agreed to let Teresita's friends and family inspect the jewelry. They confirmed that some of the jewelry belonged to Teresita, including a ring she was wearing.
Yeah, that's very suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this reenactment actress was, like, so over this
She
whole
was
thing.
so put out by all this.
Smoking, and she was just like, "Yeah, he did give it to me."
Whatever.
What an asshole. Are we through here?
Pretty much.
I need to go find a new boyfriend.
I got time. I got things to do. So, confronted with this evidence, Showery confessed to the murder. He said that after he left Teresita's apartment, he made a plan to return and rob her.
Why?
I don't know. When he returned, he said that she let him back in. When she turned around to lock the door, he grabbed her from behind and attacked her. And then he tried to make it look like it was a sexual crime.
I hate this because she had no reason not to trust him.
Yeah, he was just there earlier fixing her TV. He didn't have the
worked
tools.
together. They're like work friends or work acquaintances or whatever. Like, of course she's going to let him in.
Yeah.
And yeah, he had already come and gone and not done anything. It's terrible.
Right. For all she knew, he was just coming back with the tool to finish fixing her TV. So
it's awful.
Yeah, really bad. Yeah, so then he took her bedroom mattress. After killing her, he took her mattress, placed it over her body, and set it on fire. Despite his confession, he pleaded not guilty to Teresita's murder. When a mistrial happened, he decided to plead guilty on February 23rd, 1979. He received only a 14-year sentence for this cold-blooded crime. I love the shade this person who wrote this Unsolved Wiki is throwing. He has since been released. So this case first aired in April 25th, 1990. It was also covered in the book Houses of Horror by Richard Weiner.
Yeah, that sounds like a great book.
This case,
really classy.
I know, was one of the few profiled and unsolved mysteries that was solved prior to the broadcast. It focused mainly on the supernatural aspects surrounding the murder. Yeah, because they already had the guy.
Yeah.
So that was that. R.I.P. Teresita.
It's awful.
And yeah, I kind of believe your theory that this unnamed woman was just like fucking Alan, and that's how she knew, and she didn't want her husband to find out.
Yeah, there's some way that she knew, and so she made up this ghost thing. I mean, maybe they weren't banging, but there's something she didn't want to admit because otherwise this is a very sad case. So it's nice that they focus on this ridiculous ghost element where she has like windswept Mariah Carey music video hair and then like appears and is like, hello, avenge my dad.
If you were murdered, would you come back as a ghost to help solve it?
Oh, absolutely. That'd be my first priority.
I mean, it depends on what's going on in Ghost World. Like, if
you haven't crossed over yet, you don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, is there cool stuff around? Like, I would want to see what being a ghost afforded me as far as opportunity.
If it was a good use of your time.
Yeah, like if that's fun, then I'm like,
I would be
a ghost.
I would be haunting. I would be burning down that fucker's house. That's all I would do. Unlike Arden, that would be out seducing people and then going, psych, I'm a ghost.
Ghost slut.
Ghost slut. But, which I think is an amazing use of ghost time. I would be completely focused on vengeance. Not even the person that killed me. I think I would go beyond that. Just people who had wronged me. So...
Liz
watch it, everyone.
Don't cross Liz in this life or you will pay for it in the next.
It's true.
So
do you want your walls to weep blood or don't you? Think about it.
I mean, it really depends. Like, if you can, like, if you're stuck in the house, sure, haunt people until you can move along. But if you get to just kind of like cruise around, fly around,
yeah.
and stuff,
I mean, according to Dangerous Linda, you don't have to haunt the place where you died.
Yeah, it's something you could be very emotionally connected to. Mm-hmm. So
for Liz, that's going to be whoever
has crossed my path,
sure,
and deserves what's coming to them. And you know who you are.
Do you think there are any ghosts out there who are like, I kind of deserved it? Like,
they probably. It sounds like they're more at peace. They probably crossed on.
Probably.
You think?
Where they're like, you're right. Or maybe they want to make amends for why they deserved it.
Oh, maybe.
Or they're just like
karma
ghosts
that
who
out.
are just kind of like,
this is my fate.
Just sitting around.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm gonna haunt.
Like bored ghosts?
Yeah, like...
They're like, I deserve to be in this purgatory.
Right, yeah, they're like...
I was kind of an ass. Yeah.
I would hope that ghost people who are assholes in this life would have that kind of self-reflection in the next.
But they probably don't.
Yeah.
They probably like, I was such a good human. I can't believe
yeah, you're right.
They're going to be like super smug and awful.
Oh, God, can you imagine like...
being haunted by a smug, terrible ghost?
That'd be terrible. Yeah.
You're so lucky that I'm haunting your house.
God damn it.
It'd be terrible.
You again. Yeah. Or like if you were in a ghost, situation, like maybe two people had died in the same house, and so you're one of them, and then the other person is just like insufferable.
Like two ghosts that don't get along.
Yeah.
I
like
bet two people have died in this
forever.
house. This house is like more than 100 years old.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the basement you guys have too? Yeah, for sure. It's haunted.
Yeah.
So
do you think they get along?
Yeah, what if those ghosts don't get along? They're like the odd couple of ghosts. It's like, quit jangling your chain so loud.
Yeah.
Some of us are trying to ghost sleep.
Quick turning on those drills.
Yeah.
Ringing those bells.
Ringing the sex bell. Stop it. Mac doesn't know what we're talking about because he doesn't know. But that's something a ghost did on Unsolved Mysteries. Mac.
Yep. All right, there's one.
He just looks away in dismay.
No, I feel bad for ghosts. Some ghosts.
Some
Others.
ghosts.
Yeah.
The nice ghosts.
Yeah.
The Caspers of the ghost world.
Yeah, some people do deserve to be ghosts, whether or not they realize it or not.
Did you ever watch the 90s live action movie Casper, Samantha, as a child?
I don't think I watched that one. I have watched Casper.
That house in that movie was like my dream, the Casper house. It's just like a gigantic, ridiculous haunted mansion that no one would ever live in and this could not possibly be real. But Christina Ricci like falls in love with Casper, who's haunting her house. It's so sweet. Yeah. Kind of wish I was watching it right now.
Keeps talking about he's gonna invent a new type of mattress that you can just roll up and deliver.
Give to every podcaster.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like,
that's right, folks. Casper yeah. We're the one podcast not brought to you by Casper Mattress.
Is Casper one of the companies we actually like asked for a sponsorship? I know we asked LaCroix and they were like polite about it.
I think they were like, yeah, we'll get back to you.
Never did.
Crickets.
Now I'm drinking polar water.
Waiting
LaCroix.
On that.
Whoa.
We might have asked Casper, and I think they were like,
we've tweeted occasionally. I think
like, hey,
I remember a tweet going out that said something like, "Hey Casper, are we the only podcast you don't sponsor?"
And they were sort of like, "We'll look into it." Crickets. Sorry. Maybe they heard what I said about Amazon and they don't trust me now. Yeah. Not
and
sure.
then we've revealed that their company is
run by ghosts.
Run by ghosts, and that we actually sleep on an IKEA mattress. But if you want to change that, Casper, send me a free mattress. Hello. I will happily throw that.
No, I don't. No, I don't want
to. Max, like, hold up, don't commit to that.
Take it up the stairs and get rid of the old one? No way.
Oh, that's a really good point. Still send us free mattresses to Anthony needs them for our house.
Yeah.
I'll take the mattress.
Okay.
Yeah, send it to us and we'll figure out where it goes.
We'll redistribute the wealth of mattresses. There's one last mystery just tacked on the end of this episode.
A super sad one.
Which I feel like is rude because this mystery deserved more prominence. I don't know. Also, I just feel personally connected to this mystery. This is the Las Cruces bowling alley massacre, which I bowled in this bowling alley several times before learning of this horrific nightmare of a case. Yeah, so is Mac. Mac likes to bowl under the name Dr. Bowling.
I'm real bad at it.
He is so bad at bowling that I can beat him, which is something I like in a husband. It's hot. Yeah.
Scoring less than 100 points.
Oh, yeah.
Do you put the bumpers on when you go bowling?
No, we probably should. We're both terrible.
Oh, I know, no shame. I'll use the bumpers all day long.
We probably should not be in Minnesota. We're so bad at bowling. Okay. I'm joking because I don't want to get to this case because it breaks my heart into 1 million pieces. This goes back to February 10th, 1990. It takes place in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Ida Holgan, I'm not saying that right, am I?
Which, her first or last name?
Her last name.
They said Holgan on the show, but I think it's Holguin.
Okay. Holguin was in the kitchen of the Las Cruces bowling alley preparing for lunch. In the main office, day manager Stephanie Senek was adding up the previous night's receipts. Stephanie's 12-year-old daughter, Melissa, was there. And Melissa's friend, Amy, was there in the office. I fucking hate everything about this. At 8:20 a.m., which I'm shocked there was even anyone at the bowling alley, honestly.
Yeah.
A gunman appeared and forced Ida into the office, where the second gunman was already holding the 3 hostages. The 2 men forced Stephanie to give them all the money in the office, which was about $4,000. After that, the victims assumed the gunman would leave, which is what they should have done.
Yeah.
Because they had the money, and from my experience with the Las Cruces PD, they were never, ever, ever, ever going to get caught. And they could have just driven away with $4,000. But no, they decided to shoot everyone at the head.
Including, there was like a guest.
At the same time, employee Steven Turan arrived with his 2-year-old daughter, Valerie, and his 7-year-old stepdaughter, Paula. He couldn't find a sitter, so he was dropping them off. And the gunman forced them into the corner with the other victims, and they were also shot in the head.
Ugh.
Before leaving, the gunman set fire to the office of the bowling alley. Surprisingly, Melissa not only survived, but was in condition to call 911.
Mm-hmm.
So the paramedics arrived quickly and began treating the 7 victims. Stephen, his stepdaughter Paula, and Amy were all pronounced dead at the scene. Valerie Turan died in the hospital later that day. However, Stephanie, Melissa, and Ida survived the attack. Unfortunately, I'll just give you an update now that years later, Stephanie dies from complications from those wounds.
Ugh.
Authorities questioned several witnesses to the case. There's people that saw them in the parking lot outside. There's people who survived the attack. Stephanie's brother, Steve, had driven past the bowling alley just minutes before the shooting. He saw 2 Hispanic men walking towards the building. one was sort of younger than the other. They have really terrible composite sketches that one of them looks like Lionel Richie, and I'm very sure he didn't do it. I think we would have figured that out by now. And also, he just doesn't really need $4,000.
No.
They're not really sure if this was a robbery gone wrong or if there was another motive. There's speculation that they might have been selling drugs out of the bowling alley, which is not really a surprise for a bowling alley. No.
Not really.
Why you would shoot a 2-year-old over that, I have absolutely no idea, unless you're a terrible person and sending a message. Sadly, no one has ever been identified in this case. No one has ever been tried. They never found these men. The bowling alley is now called 10 Pin Alley, but it does still exist. I watched a little YouTube video that I think someone had made for like school. It was not very well done. Just for a little bit more information on the case. And there is a documentary about this called A Nightmare on Las Cruces. I didn't watch that because it just seems like schlock.
Well, so this case reminded me a lot of the yogurt shop murders.
Yeah.
There's a few podcasts about it. I read a book, which the book was very good. It was very long, called Who Killed These Girls? And that's very similar. These girls were closing up a yogurt shop, and there was victims that were just there by happenstance. Like someone's sister was there, someone's friend was there, just like helping them close up. And then they were murdered for no apparent reason. And then a fire was set, and no one's ever solved that case. And it's almost like, I don't even want to read about this or know about this because there's no resolution. And it's one of those things that kills you to know that these people got away with it and are, if they're still alive, out there living their lives, having never come to justice.
This is a really, really horrible case. I hate it. I'm glad we don't have a true crime podcast and we talk about stuff like this all the time because
I can't imagine.
It's very upsetting to me. The fact that they shot children, like,
why? Over $4,000? Over any amount of money?
You don't need to get rid of witnesses that badly. Also, even with killing all these people, they were never caught. They were never going to catch them.
And if you're, honestly, I mean, and this is weird to say, but if you are caught for stealing $4,000 versus killing 8 people or however many.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, well.
How do you weigh those two in your head and think that
that's
your best bet is to kill these people?
People think that there was a drug connection. There's not really any proof of that, though. I'm not gonna watch that documentary. That's actually I was in Las Cruces and found out about this murder. We were at the movie theater and there was a trailer for this documentary called A Nightmare in Las Cruces about this horrible attack. That movie just seems like, I don't know.
The director had made a bunch of other like Massacre in Massachusetts kind of movies.
I just don't trust.
That's gross.
I think it's manipulative, and some of these victims are still alive, and their families are still in Las Cruces and whatever. What my complaint about the Unsolved Mysteries segment is, for some reason in the reenactment, everybody is white.
I don't get that,
and that is not the case.
Yeah, that's not true.
Several of these people are Mexican American. I don't understand why that got whitewashed in the reenactment. It's just like not true to the crime. It's not true to the area. It seems like a weird thing to do. But it's really short segment.
Very short.
And that just makes me feel a little bad because I don't know.
Deserves more attention, but also there's just not a lot. There's no evidence.
There's no fingerprints.
Other than the weird sketches,
these terrible sketches of Lionel Richie and some really old man
with a lot of wrinkles in his forehead. That's really it.
Yeah, my MVM pick was from this segment, but
did you give that a name?
It's just called Classic Cop. It was on a guy named Fred.
Okay.
Is that Detective Rubio from the Las Cruces?
I believe so.
Yeah, he had a pretty good mustache.
Yes.
I think I watched that YouTube video thing with you, and they said that someone was living at the bowling alley, like that a guy,
the owner also lives there.
He was like living in the back or something, and was rumored to be connected to drugs. And the fact that somebody showed up at 8:20 in the morning, and
they probably didn't expect all those people to be there.
Yeah, like maybe the $4,000 wasn't really, like, they just took it because.
But they didn't kill that guy.
Well, he wasn't there.
Yeah.
They showed up. They didn't want anybody to know they showed up. I mean, the drug connection makes some sense.
That makes a little more sense, honestly.
It's so terrible.
It's
really
awful.
awful. Just turn around and leave. Be like, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, we're not going to bowl at 8 in the morning. Actually, this is a terrible idea.
Bye.
Bye.
And then
Yeah.
no one would have ever said anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's pretty awful. Should we rate the episode? Do you have anything else to say about that one?
No.
Okay.
No.
Mysteriousness.
Not that mysterious.
No, I guess it depends on whether or not you believe the conspiracy.
I don't.
I don't really either.
Mac, how do you feel about mysterious? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I mean, they brought up. I think they all have points. This is specifically for RFK or for everybody?
For everything.
Oh, okay.
You have to judge the episode as a whole.
Okay. I mean, I think that the episode actually had less mystery in it than some of the stuff I looked into later. So I'm going to say it's not that mysterious.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that
I'm
one.
giving it a thumbs down.
But
Yep.
that there is there are weird inconsistencies with the RFK
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
So, like, not all the way down, maybe.
Yeah.
Sure. Reenactments. That's the next category.
Actually, I thought one of the RFK reenactments was terrible. That, like,
They're not great.
Their first walking into the kitchen is, like, so phony and staged. And
The being tackled on the table.
I thought actually it was kind of poorly done.
The guy they got did look a lot like Sirhan. So
Okay.
that was all right. The Kennedy was so.
That ghost looked really stupid.
real stupid.
And her having visions or being possessed by the ghost was real dumb.
Yeah, I'm a thumbs down for
Thumbs
reenactments.
down.
Fashion.
Unremarkable.
I didn't notice anything
No.
really about the fashion.
Well, the sleeping outfit of
Yeah, so
the woman.
that gets a thumbs down for sure. Not impressive.
Not a great episode so far. Robert Stack.
He was barely in it.
He was hardly in it. He was, he's wearing that same tie over and over again these
It's
days,
so
and it's
ugly.
really ugly. So
That,
I don't know. I'm a thumbs
80s
down.
casino carpet tie.
Yeah,
Yuck.
it's pretty bad.
He probably shot like 8 of those intros.
Oh,
In a
I'm
row.
sure.
Yeah.
I want to almost give it a sideways for the two cops dressed exactly like Robert Stack, though.
Robert Stack's
They
enemies.
get a thumbs up, but Robert Stack gets, who cares?
Sure.
He gets a shrug.
Okay, so we can rate this anywhere from 0 to 5 Robert Stacks.
I don't want to watch it again.
No.
2?
I'm like a 2 out of 5 Robert Stacks. Mac, where you at?
I guess I'll give it one more Robert Stack. Just
You'll give it a 3?
I mean, I was more interested in the political thing, but yeah, it's none of these are. I guess the ghost thing is weird, but it's really just some person sort of saying.
By the way, this guy's guilty.
Yeah,
Look at him.
yeah. I mean,
She probably could have just written like an anonymous letter. That
Right.
would have been a better way to handle that than pretending she got possessed by a ghost.
or maybe she saw the. We don't need to go back to it, but maybe she like saw somebody wearing that ring and like had a dream about it. You know?
Oh,
or something.
yeah, maybe.
Just,
Oh,
like,
that's much more generous.
Then Liz's theory.
Allegedly.
yeah,
Allegedly.
yeah. Before they
Allegedly.
get sued by those people.
I want to add in a thing I meant to mention with that case was that my parents, when they lived in Chicago, lived in an apartment building that kept being arsoned. Because someone had a beef with the landlord. And the first incidence of arson was when they were literally moving in. Like they're carrying in a dresser drawer. And people are like, why did you save that in the fire? And they're like, no, we haven't even moved into this apartment yet. And then firefighters at some point stole my dad's dress shoes. So thanks for that, Chicago Fire Department.
Real nice.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. But I mean, shitty.
That's really shitty. You go into the building and then take off my dad's dress shoes. Anyway, I don't know why I'm bringing that up. It's just another weird story about my parents.
Well, that concludes season 2, episode 19.
Oh, we somehow made it for season 2. Pop the champagne.
Somehow.
Congratulations.
That was it.
Good.
Should I do a recommendation?
Sure.
Oh, actually, Maxie, do you want to recommend something?
Sure. I was thinking about it, and if you liked the Kennedy story, or if you were just more interested in the late 60s and 70s and things, I've been reading for a long time these. The historian Rick Perlstein has a series of books on the birth of the conservative movement. He started with the Barry Goldwater campaign.
Okay.
And then his probably most famous one is called Nixon Land. That one sort of tracks the rise and fall and rise again of Richard Nixon.
Of historical hottie Richard Nixon.
And then there's so it's kind of a history of the late 20th century. the one I'm reading right now is called The Invisible Bridge. It's about sort of the period between Watergate and Ronald Reagan becoming president.
Becoming our greatest president.
Well, you know, but it's just fascinating.
Liz is joking. In case you're new to this podcast.
It's really interesting because it dispels a lot of myths, like the ones we were talking about, like the you know, about the Kennedys and about
the Kennedys aren't saints sent from heaven to save us from something.
Well, and it's just like, especially considering, you know, post 9/11 and the sort of security state that built up around that, like what the 70s were really like there were just bombings all the time, you know.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the glory days of skyjacking?
Yeah, right. Like people were stealing airplanes, and which
everybody seemed, I wasn't alive then, but everybody seemed cool with. Like, that just happens. Sometimes planes get hijacked.
Stuff got really weird, and unlike
today,
right?
Where things are
unlike
very
where
normal.
Everybody gets locked down. The idea that someone could put a bomb at the airport at Christmas, and we would just kind of be like, whatever. Like that doesn't. Christmas. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a very at least 2000
whipped into a frenzy at this point.
Yeah, so it's very interesting to like be reminded of stuff that was popular, stuff that's like myths that aren't true, and they're very good books. So, and they're good reading too. They're readable.
Cool.
So, nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to recommend a show I wanted to recommend before, but they took off Netflix, but now is on Amazon Prime.
Oh.
So I can finally recommend it, which is called Appropriate Adult. It is a mini-series. I believe there's 3 episodes, and it is about the serial killers Fred and Rosemary West.
Ooh, okay.
In England. And it focuses mostly on Fred West and his trial. And it's the true story of this woman who is brought in to be his appropriate adult, which is just someone from the community who is there to represent the interests of someone being questioned by the police. And usually it's like minors, but it can also be adults that they consider might have like diminished capacity or low IQ. So she's brought in, despite having like no real experience, to like be sort of an advocate for him while he's being questioned. And it looks at it through like her point of view. I like it because it doesn't really these are like grisly, horrible, disgusting murders. It doesn't focus on that. It's focusing on the relationship this woman has to the case and how she ends up getting like sucked into it and manipulated by it. I think the acting is phenomenal. It has Dominic West. If you watched The Wire, he is playing Fred West, and he does a really great job. All the acting is really good. I liked it a lot more than Mac did. He didn't really like the resolution of it, and I feel like that's because it's a true story, if that makes sense. Like, there's only so much you can do, like, with the plot,
right?
Considering that it's based on actual events. But I think it's really well done, and is definitely worth checking out. It'll only take, I think, like 3 hours of your time, so.
Nice.
Cool.
I'm also recommending a show. This one's on Netflix. It is delightful, and it is called Love Your Garden. So this is a show from the UK in which...
Has Mac been watching?
Have you been watching this?
Yeah.
I love this show. It's so fun. So it's hosted by this guy named Alan. Do you know his last name? I forget. He must be well known in the UK.
He's like the Mary Berry of gardens.
Monty? I thought it was Monty. So.
His first name is Alan.
Oh.
One of the guys that goes with him might be named Monty. They have the same people in every episode, but he'll like show up at your door, and people are super excited to see him because he's there to redo your entire garden for you and make it into a beautiful, lush paradise. And they do every episode. The garden makeovers that they do is for deserving families. So there was like a war hero. There was a family whose daughter sadly died of lymphoma. There was a family who had 2 young children with like a rare eye disorder. And for their garden, they put this giant pergola over the entire thing. So it was all shaded. And it's incredible. And of course, every garden or like backyard, what we would call it in the US, is like in complete disarray. So it's just all dirt and it's all run down and it's horrible. And they literally tear up everything. In one episode, they put in this huge pond. And it's, first of all, heartwarming because it's a deserving family. And now they have this place where they can go and escape and enjoy their home or whatever. And then it's just really fun, and it's amazing to see the transformations they do, because they do the entire thing. Like, if you're just gardening on your own, you put in like one plant.
And you're like,
know.
I'm a genius.
Right.
That took all day.
But they create these like masterpieces. And yeah, it's really fun. It's delightful if you like to garden. I definitely recommend it. You'll get a lot of inspiration. It's fun to see like what they do in the UK. Like, I mean, in a lot of ways, gardening's the same, but sometimes, there's differences.
There's different styles. I really love an English garden.
They're pretty like cottagey,
plant focused and less lawn focused.
That's my favorite part about it, because that's what I want for my garden, because I hate mowing the lawn. I think the lawns are stupid. I want it to be heavily planted, and that's how all of these transformations are. There are many more plants and flower beds and walkways and you know, ponds and things, and much less grass.
Yeah.
I saw part of one where they put in a fern wall, and I was really into that.
Nice. Yes, they've got ferns. And I like, because they'll go into, like, what plants you can put where. So, like, for the garden where they put in a lot of shade, they spent a lot of time explaining, like, what plants you could get, that will look nice in shade. And you can put these flowers and these kind. And they're, almost all of them you can find in the U.S. The one about the pond was interesting, because you learned about what kind of plants you could plant in a pond, and... yeah.
It does give me serious garden envy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Sometimes it makes me a little overwhelmed, because I'm like, that's what I want, but how do I get there?
But that'll be hundreds of hours of work, and I'm not a TV show.
And I'll get to enjoy it for 3 years before I die, because it's going to take me the rest of my life. That's how I feel.
It's like, and this is where we'll put my coffin, because by the time we're done with the garden, I'll be dead.
Yes. By the time all the trees reach maturity, I'm going to be 80. So, yeah, I really like it. I definitely recommend it. It makes me want to be outside planting plants.
It's also interesting to watch, like, the BBC version of an HGTV show. Like, because they're not, on all of those HGTV shows, they're kind of like, oh, well, now let's go to the Lowe's Supply Center. And, you know what I mean? It's like everything's like branded to an inch of its life.
This one's not.
No, it's very
It's brought to you by the government.
Yeah, no, it's not but it's just weird. It's like almost like they don't know what to do in some ways. And so it gives it this more leisurely pace. And
one of my least favorite things about HGTV, and there's a lot, is that it's sponsored very heavily by like Remax and real estate development. Mm-hmm. So the focus is always on selling your house. Yeah. It's not living in your house. It's not enjoying your house. It's not making something like you're proud of.
That's
or
a good point.
You want to come home to. It's like, make everything bland so you can sell it to some boring fuck. Like, but this show where it's like, make a garden for your family that means something to you, that's like you're going to spend time with at like...
Yes.
It's not about how can we add value to this house so that a realtor will make more profit.
You would love the one I mentioned with the pergola, because the I forget her name, but the wife, the mother of the two little children, loved purple. So they painted the entire thing with like lilac purple. And I was like, that would never happen on an American HGTV show. This giant pergola that spans the entire yard, and it's completely painted purple from top to bottom. It was beautiful and lovely, but you're not going to do that if you're trying to sell your house.
Somehow you'd have to stick stainless steel appliances and granite
in the
pergola.
In the pergola.
Yes. Well, nobody's gonna buy it if it doesn't have these things. So.
Well, the HGTV shows where they make things outside, they do put like stainless steel grills and like gigantic TVs. Yeah. And it's like, we're gonna make this an outdoor man cave. There's like fireplaces.
Need more man caves. I think I see more caves out there.
Yeah.
Men.
Yeah.
But put in an actual cave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you watch those shows, you would think no one actually lives in a house. We're just in a perpetual state of selling
our houses. That's a good point, and something I had never considered, but it's so true. And that is another reason why I like the show, because they emphasize, like, what do you want? Like, what would make this a fun place for you to hang out? And it's usually, I want a lot of pink flowers.
Like, this is your home. It's not just a house. Like,
they ask them what they want, and everyone responds, I want to increase the value of my home on the market.
Exactly. Isn't that what everyone wants?
Yeah.
Just the human dream of living in a house that's valuated for more than I bought it for.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. I think it's time to go, friends.
Is that all we have?
Yeah. Let's plug our shit.
Okay. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the things.
If you wanted to email us a spooky story, or I don't know.
You got like 1 week to do it.
Something.
We're recording our season 2 finale with Kara.
Yes.
Next week.
In your paranormal tales of those aliens and ghosts and Jersey Devils and Ogopogos that you saw. Yep. That's Perhaps It's You podcast@gmail.com.
Yep. Patreon.
Patreon.
Support our Patreon.
You get a bonus episode a month. You get a postcard. At the moment, you get stickers because we're dumb and that's not sustainable, but we're doing it anyway. And you should give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whatever that thing is called. And we only accept 5-star reviews.
Yeah, don't bother.
Don't bother. Don't waste our time. And I think that is it. Everybody should get out there and solve some mysteries.
Bitches.
Go on, bitches. Do it.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Mac. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.